I'm Martin, the founder and initiator of the Memory of Mankind project, where we start to document our era, preserve it from oblivion, and pass on our daily life, our knowledge, our experience to the next generations. And I'm here at the Relogia conference to document the development of art, science and technology for future generations. The reason for the Memory of Mankind project is that we have to decide what we want to be kept for the next generations, the next civilization, next cultures, for our ancestors, for grandchildren probably already. That's the background of the Memory of Mankind project. This idea of keeping data permanently, of course, has to have a technical solution, and the solution is to keep it analog on a solid data carrier. These are like, you can have a look afterwards, I don't pass it now. These are ceramic tablets with printing or ceramic microfilm. You can have a look afterwards. So have a resistant data carrier is one way to store information permanently. The other question is where to store it. I mean, just storing information doesn't make sense. It's deep in a mountain. It's a salt mine, actually the oldest salt mine in the world in Austria. And these are ceramic containers, and in these containers, these tablets will be stored. That's Hallstatt, probably people have heard about that place. It's UNESCO World Heritage, and it has 7,000 years of history. That means 7,000 years of more or less constant mining of salt. It's the oldest salt mine in the world. So that seemed to be a good place to, from its topic here, to store information. The other thing is why in a salt mine, because salt and salt rock material is on the long term some fluid material. It flows into any gap or hole which are made artificially within a speed of 2 centimeters per year. So if this archive is full and abandoned, it will close itself with a remarkable speed of some decades. It is closed. That's important for a project like this, to keep information, millions, let's say, tablets, to keep it from or prevent it from the greatest threat, man himself. As we learn from history, man himself was destroying lots of history. So this feature that the mountain closes itself shelters the archive for future intrusion. To store a remarkable amount of information in a mountain without the chance to be recovered sometimes, it needs a marker, some kind of landmarker. Here is the archive, and here we store information. This marker, of course, doesn't need to be a big sign, because it will be not understandable in the future, or it will be robbed by people who don't know what it is but want to get the material out of it. It must be cheap. It don't need to be worthful. And this is a ceramic token of this size, and I will describe how symbolically it is depicted where this archive is. If you have any questions, please note them, because I know this is, when something is completely new to you, there are many questions. Just keep them and we will discuss afterwards, okay? Especially with this token, it's very condensed information now. You can see the outline of Europe and the cross line with its own longitude and latitude through Hallstatt. And this longitude crosses the coastline of Norway. And there are some enlargements of the same point of the coastline in Norway, depicting where this longitude runs through, in this case in Norway, and the same in France. So with this, you can determine the spot with an accuracy of some kilometers. And on the back side, there is the shape of the lake and the relative position of the entrance. and also a hint to the salt mineral in the form of the cube, but also in the form of the archive, which will be cubic. With this, you can determine this within some 10 meters, but in the same way as this token is the map for the archive, it is also the barrier against unauthorized access by immature societies. Because to interpret this right, you need to have a exactly measured coordinate system and insight in geological processes, because the coastline will change if the sea level changes. We could determine this position from the longitude since the late 80s by satellite measurement of the coordinate system. Before we had triangular, and it was tens of kilometers away, the sun longitude in Norway as in Austria. So you need to have an exact measured coordinate system and insight into geological processes, because after an ice age, the shape of the lake would be different or disappear. So only a society with this knowledge has the chance to find this archive. Otherwise, it would not make sense. It doesn't make sense for a medieval society or even for, let's say, a 1920 comparable society to find this archive, because you need to automatically process all the content to decipher it and so on. The next question is, the content. I often get asked, what are the filters? What do you put inside this archive? And there's actually no filter. We decided to divide the contents of this idea into 3 sections. One is called general content, where we collect content without trying to get a biased content. That means, for example, to collect automatically the daily editorials of the big newspapers of every country. So that can be contradicting from newspaper to newspaper or from country to country, but that's how our world is. Or to collect automatically content of important magazines explaining what we think is important. The second content, the second group, is specific content. That's the content or where MOM, the project MOM, is used as a medium. That means other institutions or entities are storing pre-selected content in the archive. For example, universities select the best research diploma thesis and store it in the archive. Or the nuclear industry will store the information where on Earth these places for nuclear waste will be. For example, literature prizes. This is pre-selected material by institution. They are well selecting for some particular reasons and bring this content into the archive. And the third, and this is I think the most interesting, is individual content. Everybody can upload whatever he wants. So there's a text upload possibility, and it's free. You can also donate and then design tablets if you want. And this mosaic of probably thousands of different stories from different authors, and they're ranging definitely from very personal, very individual and very personal stories to, in this case, the thesis of a student while detecting gravitational waves recently. So this is from high science to gossip, a picture of our time. And by this possibility that everybody can participate, we call it the first bottom-up told history of mankind. Usually history is written by institutions, by the winners of a war, or by historians. In this case, we write our history. Yeah, what's also important is what I recently realized, that giving a overall view of our era, or let's say the big selfie of our time, It's not a project of vanity or pride, although single contributions are made of, or the intention is probably vanity or pride, but the whole picture is more as a responsibility to pass on the next generations, on next but one generation. Because what I think is when you don't know your past, you can't understand your presence. You don't have a future. So this project is overall more a gift to our grandchildren to preserve their past, more or less. When working with the MOM project, there are many questions arising. I mean, it starts with a first question where the answer looks very simple. Who will be the recipients of this project? Who are the addressees of this idea? And you can simply say, well, any intelligent society. But that raises the question, are there more intelligent societies than ours? What if we got extinct? Was it that? So we are just a cosmic incident? Or are there probably some universal rules that lead automatically, sooner or later, to intelligent societies? And that's why I'm here. That's what has the whole project to do with Relogia. This question, how does intelligent societies appear? I want to take you with me to, well, let's say a cosmic trip, very short. Is there some cosmic rules? Probably sooner or later life appears on the planet that's suitable for life. It's a question of probability. If you imagine the whole planet with its circumstances as a big laboratory with the circumstance of temperature and organic material, and they have a lot of time, well, there is a lot of time and a lot of trials. Sooner or later it will obviously appear that some self-replicating molecules appear. And the appearance of life obviously is a rule in the universe because copying has the possibility of errors. There are these nice simulations of life. Maybe you know this. It's called Tierra. Did anybody know about Tierra? Okay, that's simply explained a program line which should just replicate itself and use memory space. So when you start this program, it starts to replicate itself and just writing for the memory space. Sooner or later, it will, due to some material errors in the hardware, alter. Some of them will not function anymore because they cannot replicate. Some probably get longer without any new function, but some of these are starting to override already full memory space. Some of them start to eat the others, or some of them start to develop parasites like viruses that make other lines produce themselves. So if you let this run, sooner or later it will split in different, let's say, artificial species or virtual species. So this as a model for the inherent errors in our physical laws is probably a rule that sooner or later life will appear in this universe. When there are competing organisms, they have to develop some strategies to overcome barriers. I will say develop strategies. Of course, they don't develop themselves. Some of them can overcome the barrier and survive and give on their genes, and the others cannot, and they will die. So strategies is just a an outcome of selection. What is then interesting is that it comes to cooperation. That's obviously an important step that species start to cooperate because it is an advantage to survive. It's by selection, when you cooperate, you have more chance to have food and more chance to pass on your genes. Cooperation and social behavior are two different things, and there must be a step where cooperation turns into social behavior. Cooperation is, let's say, you have a particular place in the hierarchy, and you have one task, and you fulfill this one task, and you have no chance as an individual to move into other levels. When social behavior arrives, it was, I think, ants are sometimes called social, but they are more or less cooperational because they cannot move into a different level in the social status. They function as an individual, but have no chance to get into a higher or a lower hierarchy. Whereas mammals, we know all these alpha animals, we have social interaction. So this is something inherent in our evolution on the planet. Sooner or later, if there is enough time, we'll come to social behavior. So what does it need to get from a social behaving society into an intelligent society? Maybe it's probably some thoughts or speculations. When you think of it, it's probably three parameters. We need to have a social society into an intellectual society transition. The three parameters are curiosity, they are communication, and altruism. Curiosity means, if you just imagine early humans created fire. There must be a second who is able to form his interest and must be curious enough and not frightened from this fire. So he must be curious, overcome his natural fear of fire, and curious enough to ask the first individual, how did you make it? Or make it some way, ask him. And this first individual must be altruistic enough to tell the second how he did it. That means some kind of communication must be there, altruism must be there, and curiosity. There are animals who are curious, but they are not altruistic. For example, crows, they can build tools, but they would never show another crow how they did it. There are also ravens, they have some social interactive, social hierarchies. They can also build tools. Well, they lack probably of limbs. They had 50 million longer time to develop into an intelligent society than we had, but the lack of hands probably prevented them to develop into a society would be 50 million more advanced than we are. So these three parameters and the understanding of the principle of cause and effect, which is also part of the universe, would lead to the principle of cause and effect, the understanding of it, the academic application of it, the passing on of experience and knowledge, this learning of making tools, and this cause and effect principle also contains time, because it doesn't matter if something happens 1 millisecond before or 1,000 years before. But by understanding the cause and effect, you start to understand time also. And there is one very important feature which is, I think, underestimated in our evolution, is that we can see the stars. Imagine we would live on a planet with a constant, gapless, cloudy stratosphere and we cannot see the stars, we would have no chance to navigate, or we could not see regularities in, well, we could see it's getting light and getting dark, but we can't see the sun. It would, well, I think it's a great difference. If you're living on a planet where you can see the stars, you're not getting curious what is out there because you can't navigate. You're not used to overstep borders or go to the sea and try to find out what is beyond. So a society living on a cloudy planet will probably get stuck in some Stone Age stage probably, and will rather slowly develop into a society without seeing the stars. It enabled us, of course, to develop the theory of relativity and quantum physics just by watching the stars. Well, this enabled us to navigation. We determined different single stars, and we can see the moon and see the regularities in it, and we can probably start to count and calculate. We sooner or later understand that it's a very regular period, and then we understand it's 28 times sleeping and awake in the morning, and then start to add or to start to calculate days. What would mean it's a very primitive art of a method of mathematics. Well, this is an advanced stage of curiosity, but without the stars we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't build, or let's say, pyramids, or we would not navigate with ships to intercontinental journeys. We wouldn't explore space, or probably there will be no reloja. So these questions about humanity, or let's say probably some cosmic rules, brings us back to the MOM project. Who are the recipients? Well, can answer any intelligent society, probably some descendants of rodents if we don't live anymore on this planet, but sooner or later the society will get intelligent and be interested in their past if they apply the principle of cause and effect. It would be quite interesting for us if we would know if there was intelligent dinosaurs, for example. They left no traces. Probably there were, get stuck in the Stone Age. We don't find anything, but obviously there are no traces. We don't know, but it could have been. It was 80 million years ago, so probably all traces are gone. When we ask, well, there will be recipients or addressees in the future, will they comprehend at all what we want to put inside? Well, first there's language, but there's a language deciphering tool. I can point it out later if you want. So that describes our languages, how we use it today, so future linguists can decipher it. But could they comprehend at all? Would they be completely different than we are, a different society? Or are intelligent societies more or less all passing in a more or less similar path, or with the more or less similar stations through development or through the evolution, or let's say development of intelligent societies? I'm convinced that any society would have more or less the same steps as we did. And if it's a cosmic rule, we can assume that in the universe, if there is intelligent life, even if they are more advanced, they would have stepped through a period as we live now in, and would probably understand as a similar past they had. So this Memory of Mankind project assumes that any other society in a similar stage as we are would understand the content because they had a past too, even if they are much more advanced. One very important one very important and maybe the most important content of Mon is the documentation how we now step into the Anthropocene. This transition from a self-consciousness as an individual to a self-consciousness as a species. We have self-consciousness since, let's say, 1 million years ago, so we understand we are an individual. My action has a reaction in my community or in surrounding. Now we understand that our action as species has an influence in the biosphere, in the geosphere, and we are now really at that point where we start to understand it. So that is one part of the content I want to document this transition into the Anthropocene. And I think relogia is also a way where we come from one understanding into a next understanding. Thank you.